Welcome to EVTN News. We self-identify as the #1 news network in the world. And I'm getting right into a list. There is a Catholic nun who made a list of 19 incredible LMNOPs making the world a better place, who are loud, proud, and making the world a better place is what the headline said. So that was pretty interesting. This nun, her name is Sister Janet Rosano. She's of the Sisters of Mercy, and I want to share a quote with you that she said. With each new step on this journey over the years, I have felt strengthened and encouraged by the affirmation and support of so many sisters. Their response is a source of great pride for me, as well as a very precious gift. The Spirit has led me in ways that sometimes feel so unorthodox that confound my natural reticence and that demand risks and a courage I never dreamed I possessed. Alright, so it's interesting how she refers to the Spirit. It would be hard for me to imagine that's the Holy Spirit. And as for her community, the Sisters of Mercy, I took a look at their website, and they just wear ordinary clothes. They don't have habits, and most of the people in their community, it appears that they're over 60 years old, so not much of a future. But if you knew someone who was interested in becoming a nun, would you refer them to a religious order or a group of nuns who have people who identify as LMNOP? I don't think so. And so that could be one of the reasons why their religious order will I guess, be abolished in the next several decades, just due to lack of numbers. What is Archbishop Sample doing? There's a lot of strange virus restrictions, as you know, the government entity that deals with the virus. They had relaxed their restrictions surprisingly, much to the disappointment of the virus religion members. And Archbishop Sample is one of the good bishops in the United States, and so this was very surprising to read on the National Catholic Register. He said, it said, in mid-May, the Archdiocese of Portland, Oregon announced on its website that the fully jabbed are no longer required to wear things over their face at Mass and faith gatherings, but the pastors must set aside space for those who aren't fully jabbed. Stating that the fully jabbed shouldn't experience a sense of discrimination, the Archdiocese suggested that the parishes designate separate sides of their churches for the jabs and jab-nots. So it really is segregation, discrimination. I don't really understand what the part about discrimination is, but the fully jabbed, giving them special treatment, I don't know. It's very interesting. What is Archbishop Sample trying to accomplish here? Is he just trying to comply with the government? Because I thought he was one of the good bishops, and apparently he's doing what the not so good bishops are doing. There's many of the bishops that are doing the similar things here, but I don't know. It's one of those things where he's being pressured, I think. And he's caving to the pressure, and he's not going to get any support from Rome, that's for sure. But he would get some support from the lay people, but based on the city where he's in, he wouldn't get support from them either. So, I don't know, he's in a difficult situation. Pope Francis will probably just leave him there because the city's so far to the left that there's nothing that Archbishop Sample can do. And the vocations that he gets, I would imagine they're pretty good traditional Catholics, because of Archbishop Sample's mentality and his cooperation with Benedict's plan in terms of good liturgy. Archbishop Sample's a really big fan of sacred music, and he also has said that every priest, every seminarian, he thinks every seminarian should learn the Latin Mass. So that's a good thing. But as far as complying with the virus religion, they're putting on the pressure, and Archbishop Sample's just complying, and that's disappointing. The Pillar released an article that said 60 bishops petitioned the USCCB to stop the communion debate, the debate where Archbishop Gomez wants to talk about denying Joe Biden communion, and other pro-abortion politicians. He wants to deny communion as well. The article says the letter was signed by several U.S. cardinals, including Cardinal Wilton Gregory of Washington, Cardinal Successor of Chicago, Cardinal O'Malley of Boston, and New York's Cardinal Dolan was originally a signatory on the letter, but he withdrew his name from the text after it was sent. So the problem is, like, not all 60 bishops were named. These were the only people that were named, and Dolan wasn't one of them. He was initially going to sign it, but then he decided not to for whatever reason. Maybe he was inspired by the Holy Spirit, who knows. But I think that these names, this list of names, it demonstrates who is against us, who is against Catholicism, who is against pro-life. And if you want to continue to allow people in public sin, in serious public sin, and it's not serious, it's public mortal sin, those who have rejected the Catholic faith to receive communion, then these are your guys. Cardinal O'Malley, he was a little bit surprising because I thought he kind of shied away from controversy, but here he is. There's his name. 60 other bishops. I think someone calculated there were around 250 bishops that would participate in the USCCB, including auxiliaries and the Eastern Catholic bishops. So 60, but it's still a significant amount. Even though it's not a majority, it's enough, and the names are powerful enough to influence a lot of the other bishops and what they think. But being that it was kind of, I don't know, was this an anonymous petition? I don't know. We don't know all the names. It'd be interesting to find out some of the names so that we could send them letters and say, hey, what's the deal? And we do know there are over 10 LMNOP supporting bishops who openly support that kind of stuff. But now we see that there's 60 who faithlessly want to just give communion to anyone, regardless of whether they're in mortal sin, public mortal sin, because you can't really tell who's in private mortal sin. I mean, it's not something that you can really judge, or not something that you really should try to judge. But publicly, that's something completely different, especially when they publicly are on the national stage. It's not like I'm going and saying to a friend something like, hey, whatever, I don't know, robbed a bank or something. And then they report it to the priest. It's up to the priest to figure it out and potentially deny me communion. But, or if someone's, living with a boyfriend or girlfriend outside of marriage, then that's something that would be probably worth denying communion over, if you can prove, if the priest could confirm that that's the case. But otherwise, it's just one of those things where the USCCB meeting's coming up, and the corrupt cardinals are trying to push this off of the agenda of the USCCB. Archbishop Gomez is really he's really moving forward with it, and I'm happy with the stance that he's taken so far. We'll see if he gets intimidated by the Vatican or these corrupt cardinals, and we'll see what happens with that just in a few weeks. Pope Francis appoints Archbishop Arthur Roche as a successor to Cardinal Sarah. So this is the Congregation for Divine Worship. He's the new prefect, and he was the former secretary for Cardinal Sarah. Now Archbishop Roche is a protege of Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor. Not good. He was the secretary for Cardinal Sarah, and his signature often appeared on documents rather than Cardinal Sarah's signature. The most recent example being a November 2020 letter that the Archbishop signed in support of Bishop Rick Sticka of Knoxville, Tennessee, when he said he wanted to ban communion on the tongue for virus reasons. And I criticized Cardinal Sarah in a video saying that he should have overruled that, but he didn't. But it shows that this is the way the CDW is going to go. Now, the Italian Franciscan Bishop Vittorio Viola was promoted into the secretary's position, which Archbishop Roche, that was his former position. And Bishop Viola is known to be a protege of Bishop Luca Brandolini, who in turn was a disciple and co-worker of Archbishop Annibale Bugnini. Have you heard of that name? He was one of the creators of the New Mass, and he was also rumored to be a Freemason. Now, as for Bishop Viola, he was ordained a priest in 1993 by Bishop Brandolini, who said, that's what I said. Who said that Bishop Brandolini said he was in mourning, fighting back tears when Benedict XVI made the traditional Latin Mass more accessible in Summorum Pontificum. The actual quote from Brandolini is, "A reform for which many people worked with great sacrifice and only inspired by the desire to renew the Church has now been canceled." Oh, was it only inspired by the desire to renew the Church? I don't think so. Anyway, journalist Damian Thompson said, "I've loathed Roche since I caught him playing all manner of tricks to kill off Summorum Pontificum in Leeds Diocese. Also, he's never forgiven me for revealing that in his youth he was a champion figure skater, surprising in view of his girth." Well, sounds like he has his enemies, and it sounds like those enemies are traditional Catholics, so that's not good enemies to have, especially if you're trying to be Catholic. Archbishop Samuel Aquila of Denver speaks out against the German synodal path. I have a few quotes from a letter that he wrote. He said, "Despite lip service to the authority of sacred scripture and tradition, it is evident that the Synodal Assembly's interpretive approach is sufficiently malleable to strip them of any truly decisive content." And it said, the Archbishop warned that this approach makes divine revelation captive to endlessly protean hermeneutics of dialogue. They should be contrasted with the authentic understanding of dialogue articulated by Vatican II and developed by the post-conciliar popes. Really? Every argument we have. And, Archbishop Aquila, give him credit for speaking out against the Germans, but it seems like all these debates, discussion, it goes back to Vatican II, and what's the real interpretation of the documents. And Archbishop Aquila says, "Oh, well, Vatican II, they're not understanding these documents correctly." How many bishops get stuck in the Vatican II mud? It seems like pretty much all of them, because they're like, "Oh, the documents were great, but they're just misinterpreted." I don't know that they really were, because wouldn't you have a whole bunch of bishops speaking up as soon as the council ended and the reforms were implemented? Wouldn't you have a whole bunch of bishops speaking up and saying, "No, this isn't what we intended"? But who were the ones that spoke out against it? There were only two that I can think of, Ottaviani and Lefebvre. And Lefebvre founded the SSPX, and the rest is history, and he preserved the Old Mass. But what I'm saying is, these bishops, they try to use Vatican II to support their point. Well, you have 1950 years of other Catholic teaching to support your point, so just use that. Don't drive into the dirt road and the mud pit of Vatican II, and because you'll get stuck in the mud, and then everyone's just going to go back and forth on what Vatican II actually means. And that's the problem with these bishops, is they try to do something good, but then they start referring to Vatican II, and then it just completely defeats their purpose. But give credit to him for speaking out against the German synodal path. The Vatican hasn't spoken out against it, so I'm glad to see at least an archbishop speak out against it. Steve Skojec is losing it. He wrote an article ranting against his pastor at an FSSP parish in Phoenix, Arizona. And Rod Dreher, who quit the Catholic faith, he supported Skojec in a very long article. I read some of Skojec's complaints and his rants against this priest, and what happens is that Steve Skojec went to ask for his kid to get First Communion, and then also, I don't know if him and his wife are expecting another kid, and he wanted to, like, kind of plan for a baptism. And the priest gave him a very hard time about it. He was very offended. He said, well, I haven't been to Mass every week, and all this stuff, and excuses about the virus, and so the situation in this church, this FSSP church, is a very small church. And so the actual church part fills up, and there's another room off to this. I don't know where, it's near the church where the overflow crowd has to sit, and they do live stream the Mass, and then those people are able to come into the actual church for communion. But Steve Skojec was complaining about that he said, well, I can live stream at my house rather than watch a screen at the church and all this stuff. And he's been supportive of the virus religion. I think he supports the jab. And running a traditionalist blog, I've agreed with a lot of the stuff on his blog. He has some good authors from time to time write for him. So I don't mean to criticize that. And I don't really mean to criticize him so much because I don't want to focus on slamming a bunch of Catholics, but with him, he just always has this crisis of faith, and I think he spends way more time on Twitter than any other Catholic commentator, and most other Catholics don't spend nearly as much time as him on Twitter, so I think it would help him to stay off of Twitter. And also, if he's having this crisis of faith, he should find a spiritual director. Probably that priest that he was criticizing could be a good spiritual director. And I have a few things to say about that. So I don't know the priest personally, but in Rod Dreher's article where he says, "Oh yeah, I support Skojec," Dreher actually quit the faith and went to Orthodox. So he doesn't really. His opinion on this is irrelevant. But at the end of his article, he says, "I have heard from someone in Steve Skojec's parish who, as it turns out, I know. This person says that the portrait of the parish priest painted in Skojec's column and repeated by me here is very, very far from the mark. This person does not want to say anything else publicly because the person does not want to make a bad situation worse. The person only wants readers to know the priest is a good and holy man who, in the correspondent's view, has been badly mischaracterized." Alright, and I'll add my 2 cents here. I have inside information saying that the priest is a good guy. So, that's what I have to say on this situation. Maybe Steve Skojec should take a little bit of time off of the internet. And really anyone who's having any kind of crisis like this really should take some time off of the internet. And, it's good for your spiritual life. It's good for your mental health. If you feel yourself going crazy, then, go outside and get some fresh air and enjoy the birds. I like to do some bird nerding. And maybe Skojec, he could, go to the mountains in Arizona, or go to the Grand Canyon or Sedona, or one of the really nice places around there. Take a little break, and spend some time with your family, and just refresh a little bit, because obviously he needs a little bit of a change in scenery. And ranting against this FSSP priest, who, by all accounts, a lot of people on Twitter are saying is a very good guy. It's not really helping out his cause at all, and it may hurt his donations. It may hurt donations to 1 Peter 5's website. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. I hope that I see that he's losing it. I hope that he finds it soon. Church Militant reports that a traditional priest has been removed. This priest is Father James Parker of Holy Cross. He was removed by Rockford, Illinois Bishop David Malloy. Now, Father Parker had encouraged his parishioners to inform themselves before making a decision on the jab, so this was probably for crimes against the virus religion. Father Parker, a parishioner of Holy Cross, said that Father Parker, he's been under the crosshairs of Bishop Malloy for quite some time because he wanted to reintroduce a communion rail. He wanted to bring in a 24-hour perpetual adoration chapel. He's more of a traditionally minded priest. I know of priests that are without a parish. It's a limbo. So that I think there are other priests in that diocese that are without a parish. I don't know, can't confirm that, but this is the Church Militant report. And I went to look at a profile Bishop David Malloy, and it turns out in 2017 He wrote a letter to priests in his diocese, and Bishop Malloy stated that no priest may celebrate Mass ad Orientem or the Latin Mass without his permission. He cited a need for, this is a quote, unity in the shared celebration of the sacraments, especially the Eucharist, and the need to limit confusion. So, what's unity in the shared celebration of the sacraments? What do we talk about in unity at Mass? Do we need to hold hands? I don't know. So that's absolutely ridiculous. Bishop Malloy needs to resign. If he's skeptical of ad Orientem worship, he needs to resign. I've been pretty consistent on that point. And then they need to limit confusion. What's confusion? Whenever you have a clown giving the homily? Or is it whenever there's liturgical dancers? What's confusion if they can't understand Latin? Whenever there's a book and you can read Latin on one side, English on the other? I don't know. But Bishop Malloy is the one causing confusion. And like I said, I reiterate, he needs to resign. Any priest who bans or even tries to restrict the Latin Mass, I think they need to resign. They need to take a good look at why they're a bishop. Is it just to manage the government money coming in? Or is it to care for souls? And most of these bishops have lost their sense of purpose, really, because they're more or less managing the diocese at this point. They're the business manager of the diocese. And if you have a priest that is speaking Catholicism, you have to shut him down because it's going to offend people. Who's it going to offend most? The government, because the government are anti-Catholic. And we know that. So anytime we're getting government money, we're just increasing our dependence on the government. And that's what I'm sure the government's happy with that, because the bishops aren't preaching Catholicism. Most of them aren't. Strickland is, and Bishop Malloy isn't. He's limiting the Catholic faith, and it's overall negative. So it's very disappointing. Church militants report on this. They're going to follow up on the situation, find out more information, and with Church Militant, they're reporting. I mean, these types of reports, I like their reports here because they're defending good priests in this situation, and that's that. Sometimes their reporting is a little bit slanted, but for the most part, this one right here, this is good. I appreciate that, and I'll share. I'm glad to share this report on the EVTN news. And for my final segment, I'm going to share a little bit of good news. And Bishop Hein supports ProLife. This is the Bishop of Madison, Wisconsin, who I think he kicked out Father Z. But anyway, he was disappointed about the list of 60 bishops. It wasn't really a list, a public list, but the 60 bishops who signed a petition to table the discussion on communion and Biden and other pro-abortion politicians receiving communion at the USCCB meeting. I want to just share what he wrote here. He said, last November, the United States bishops voted overwhelmingly in favor of the process of preparing a document that would catechize on the centrality of the Eucharist and address the challenging issues of Eucharistic coherence. Given all this preparation, many of us bishops were surprised and dismayed to discover that a group of fellow bishops recently wrote a letter to Archbishop Gomez asking him to delay this important and necessary process. I express my full support of the original plan and vision to address these significant themes. And so the 60 bishops, it looks like he was caught off guard by a lot of these bishops who didn't even want to talk about it. They want to focus on the environment or other communist, socialist, Marxist ideas. And Bishop Hein's like, no, we're Catholic. We want to support these issues, or we want to support these. We want to support pro-life because that's what Catholic bishops do, right? Even after Vatican II, whenever a lot of these important issues were de-emphasized, pro-life was one of the things that the bishops kind of stood up for. A lot of them attended the March for Life. They said abortion is bad, and that's what we want. We want bishops who support pro-life. And Bishop Hein, I wonder how many of the other bishops were caught off guard by this the number of 60 bishops who signed this petition to get rid of the discussion on pro-life. Bishop Hein is one of them. Maybe there are a few more. I don't know, but I certainly hope that a lot of these bishops, there's some kind of like righteous anger boiling up inside of them, and I certainly hope they get fired up and some of them will speak the truth at the USCCB conference. Now, because it's on Zoom, I don't know how many bishops are going to have the opportunity to speak, and a lot of times what happens is that they get kind of caught in the weeds and talk about an issue that's really not relevant or important. And that was kind of like Bishop Strickland and Paprocki at the last USCCB meeting. They defended the legacy of Pope John Paul II. There's so many urgent things to talk about at the USCCB meeting, and you waste your one chance on defending the legacy of John Paul II. And this was after the McCarrick report came out. And so they were saying, oh, well, we still need to defend his legacy and stuff. But the problem is, no one said anything about Vigano. Well, Supich referred to Vigano. He said that we need to pledge our loyalty to Pope Francis, and basically that means that's the USCCB's version of blind obedience, sola obedientia. It's the USCCB's version of avoiding division, is that you have to do what we tell you, say what we want you to say, or else you're divisive. And the Vatican doesn't like it, because it's Catholic. It's too Catholic for the Vatican. But here's the problem with that. There's a growing group of lay people that aren't standing for it. And we're going to the Latin Mass. They don't want us to go to the Latin Mass. They're trying to get rid of Summorum Pontificum. At this point, I want to say, who cares what the Vatican thinks? That's not a good attitude to have, but you're not going to be able to take away the Mass of the Ages for us. You're not going to be able to take away our Catholic faith. We have it, a lot of people have seen it, and you can't unsee it. And that's the thing here, is that the Vatican, whatever they try to do, this train is rolling. The only Catholics who are coming back to Mass are the Catholics who are Catholic. It's not the Church of Pachamama. They're the ones that are cowering in fear in their houses. Or they're the ones that are showing their passport to the virus churches. And is your church a virus church? Because it's not Catholic. And if it is, you got to find a Catholic church. I hope you can, because the virus churches, they've rejected the Catholic faith. Holy water. How many churches have holy water in their fonts? Bring your own holy water. If there's a holy water font there, pour it in. That's all. That's what you have to do. That's what we have to do. Because you're removing the holy water fights off demons. And so why would they want to remove the holy water fonts? Now, some churches have provided holy water for the parishioners in bottles, so you can bring your own bottle, BYOB, to Mass, and requiring permission slips for confession or all this stuff. It's absolutely insane. It's part of the virus religion. And I've been saying this consistently. Virus priests, we can't support them. And we won't support them. In fact, we'll reject them and we'll tell them that they need to return to the Catholic faith. We'll call them to conversion, and we have a voice, and we're going to let them know. We're going to speak out, because we are the laity and we will not be silent.